pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to first welcome our newest PSTA board member, Jim Oliver from the city of Seminole. Good morning. All right, now let's go around and introduce ourselves. I am Pat Gerard, County Commissioner, Chair of PSTA.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Brad Miller, the CEO of PSTA.
Yes, you are.
Josh Schulman, City of St. Petersburg.
I'm Richard Bennett, Commissioner, North Reddington Beach.
Jim Oliver, Vice Mayor, City of Seminole.
Patty Reed, Vice Mayor, City of Pinellas Park.
Karen Seal, Pinellas County Commission.
Peters, Pinellas County Commission.
Renee Flowers, Pinellas County Commissioner, member of the Executive Board.
Jeff Gott, Commissioner, City of Dunedin.
Jamie Robinson, Commissioner, City of Largo.
Vince Cox, Pinellas County. Dan Saraki, Mayor of the City of Oldsmar.
Gina Driscoll, St. Petersburg City Council.
And I'm Nikki Day with Bryant Miller Olive, the Acting General Counsel.
Great. All right, we first have a presentation from our state lobbyist, Mr. Ron Pierce. Do tell.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members. First of all, it's great to be back in person. I think this is the first time I've been back before the board in quite a while, so it's good to be back and kind of give you an in-person update. Just a quick update on what happened in Tallahassee. Session ended on, I think, March 13th. We've already had one special session. I think we're going to have another special session the end of May dealing with property insurance. We do expect a couple other issues that will probably be added to that. Nothing that will have a direct impact on you, which is good news. I'm not sure if you'll have a copy of your agenda in front of you. I'll kind of walk you through it really quick. Number one was Restore Transportation Disadvantage Innovative Service Development Funds. So if you all recall, 2 years ago, when the corridors bill was repealed by the legislature, there was $10 million that was a part of that went away as well, and that was our grant programs. So some of the grants programs that we funded for the Innovative Grant Program was funded out of that. Those dollars went away. The good news is they did restore a portion of the $10 million. They didn't do the entire $10 million. They put $4 million back into the grant program so we can actually use that hopefully for our late shift program. In addition to that, they took additional $2 million and put into the total base for transportation disadvantage dollars, which took that up to about $53 million, which I think the portion back to Pinellas County is around $400,000, I think, at the end of the day. FDOT 1490, the transit rule relating to 1490. I think this has been on our agenda for probably 4 years, trying to work with DOT on that. It really had an impact on us last year when some of the dollars went away for the late shift program from the corridors bill. This year we included language in one of the DOT packages that was moving. That language did not make it to the finish line, nor did the bill make it to the finish line, but the good news, by, I think, including that language, it kind of jump-started some of the conversations with DOT. They're in the process of rulemaking. They've been going through the rulemaking process. Probably for about 18 months. Into their defense, they've obviously had to work around COVID and two legislative sessions in the meantime. So I think we're close to getting language. At our legislative meeting, we talked about it. I have talked to DOT since then. I think we're hopeful we're going to have some language sometime in the next couple of months and hopefully have that in place where it would allow DOT basically to use non-transportation trust fund dollars on programs like our late shift program. So that's something that we're working towards. VW settlement funds for electric buses, that's something that we have worked really hard with. I think Brad and a number of members of our board have had a number of conversations with, DOT, the governor's office, DEP, a number of our statewide associations, a number of our, some of our electric partners here in the region. And I have really good news to report. They actually, DEP put out a grant program, which I think we've already applied for $59 million that can go to electric buses for transit organizations. We met with them back in, I think in February when Brad, came to Tallahassee. That meeting went so well, I told Brad, I'm like, I thought we were going to walk out with a check at that point in time. I thought it was like a check presentation. So hopefully we'll get that check sooner rather than later, but I'm hopeful that, I think our grant will be funded, and I think we'll get some good news there as well. We had on here the electric infrastructure fund. That was something we're trying to do through the VW settlement program. That's something that we're going to have to kind of put on the back burner for next year. If you flip over for transportation funding flexibility, CIS funding flexibility and DDR funding flexibility, those weren't things we needed the legislature to do anything on. Those are things that currently we're working with DOT on some of those flexibilities, specifically on some of the CIS funding opportunities, where instead of having to spend 75% of this funding on roads, just being able to spend some of those dollars on additional transit projects as well. So that's something that is kind of already happening, and we'll continue to work with DOT on. Medicaid, that's something we have to continue to work on. It was something we know this ultimately can be a legislative fix. This can be something we have to work with ACA on specifically, and working with ACA to make sure that if there are trips that we're providing today as an agency that we know should be reimbursed from Medicaid, we should have the ability to work with Medicaid on making sure that we're being reimbursed for that ultimately the taxpayers of Pinellas County are the ones, or PST is not the ones having to pay for that. So we'll continue to work on that. And then the last thing on here is funding, ferry service. This was not for funding for ferry service. It was more specific about, do we need to make sure that ferry service is actually considered a transit mode of transportation? And DOT said yes, they believe it is, and so did Senate staff as well. So no change had to be needed to be made there. So one final thing I'll report to you. I know this is very important to your board. I know it's really important to Debbie as well. So T-BARDA was funded again this year in the state budget. Has not been approved by the governor yet. So caveat there, the governor does not have the budget. We're really unsure of the timing of that. We think the governor will probably get the budget prior to the special session, hopefully sometime in the next couple of weeks. But T-BARDA does have 1.375 in the budget this year, some for transportation disadvantage programming and also some in there for operating. The really good news for us is typically when T-BARDA has been funded in the past, it's funded through Transportation Trust Fund. And by doing that, what happens is it starts impacting some of our programming, because what DOT does is they have to go in and kind of reallocate the dollars they have. The really good news is all the dollars have been allocated to T-BARDA this year. All of them are non-recurring general revenue, will have no impact on any of our transit partners, or more specifically us as an agency. So I'll stop there and see if you all have any questions, and more importantly, ask Brad if I missed anything or anything else you want me to cover.
Well, you covered a lot, obviously. Thank you very much, Ron. And, we kind of organized the PSTA board meeting to have a positive start to the meeting, and all the words that Ron just said, that's a positive. Compared to a lot of other sessions during up in Tallahassee, I think we were very successful this year in as Ron ticked down all the different legislative priorities that the board adopted way back in last August to get all those accomplished. It took a lot of effort. A lot of the PSA board members who came with me to Tallahassee, the legislative committee for tracking this the whole time. I think it was a successful formula that led to, knock on wood, pretty good results. Absolutely. Thank you.
Any questions? No, but thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Just kind of looking ahead, obviously we have a long runway to the 2023 session, but committee weeks do start in January. So we'll start working with Brad and your team on kind of looking ahead to next year's agenda over the summer, and probably being something back to you all towards the end of the fall, for we can be ready to hit the ground running with that first January committee week.
Great.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
Okay, now's the time for public comment on the consent agenda or items not on the agenda. Do we have any cards? Anybody would like to speak?
No, I guess not.
No? Yeah, oh, wait. Sure.
Okay. On 4D, which is the Sunrunner BRT Transit Signal Priority Agreement, are we having to pay St. Petersburg for this?
No.
Right, right.
And it seems very complicated.
Okay. We'll talk about it when we get done.
We can pull that item and
You want to pull
have a
that?
check and talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Okay.
ask the question.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
To be able to do that, though, we'll pull the item after the opportunity for public comment.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, well, if we have no one that wants to speak, we'll close public comment. Now is the time for the consent agenda. You'd like to call 4D.
Just that way we can get that question answered.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns about other things? I'll entertain a motion, y'all.
Move approval of the consent agenda with a change.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Driscoll, second from Commissioner Schulman. My thing's not working up here, in case you wondered. Yeah, please open the voting page. Hasn't come up. Oh,
Chair Gerard, I can manually, if you would say yes or no.
yeah, please, I'm just actually talking about this thing. It's not working. I did join the meeting, but, okay, well, that is unanimous. Next up, committee updates. All right.
Oh, there he is, okay.
So what?
Before
Oh,
we
I'm
go to
sorry.
committee
We need to
updates,
talk
we have
about
the one
4D,
item. Yes.
please. Commissioner Seal, would you talk about your question again? Just that you want an explanation of what?
The question was, it just seemed like in reading the procedures, it seems like it's going to be quite complicated.
Yeah, well, thanks for your interest. The action item that the Finance Committee also reviewed and unanimously recommended to the board are two agreements, two interlocal agreements, one with the City of St. Petersburg and one with Pinellas County. Both are no cost transactions. They're coordinating agreements with the signal system. And Abhishek Dayal, our project Director of Project Management, can explain exactly what they're about.
Right, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board, Commissioner Seal. My name is Abhishek Dayal, Director of Project Management. This item, as Brad noted, was approved by the Finance Committee, and essentially what we're doing is amending the current interlocal agreements that we have with both City of St. Petersburg and Pinellas County. As we're looking into now operations of Sunrunner, we're looking to complete construction here soon and begin the service. One of the key elements of this project is transit signal priority. And the way this transit signal priority system works is if a bus is running 5 minutes or more behind the schedule, then the bus can send a message to our radio room that it's running behind. The radio room then in turn sends a message out to the Pinellas County and the City of St. Petersburg Traffic Control Center. And then they will essentially determine if the conditions are right for the bus to get priority at the signals where the bus is approaching. And that allows for buses to get that extra green time or reduced red time depending on where the signal is at when the bus is approaching an intersection. And so not only the bus, but also the traffic that's going along with the bus, they also get to proceed through the intersection, and the bus essentially is able to catch up to its schedule. So we've established, in working with the city staff and Pinellas County traffic staff, established certain procedures and parameters where this would work, and we just wanted to memorialize that into an agreement and have that as part of the amendment.
Okay.
Easy to understand.
Anything else? Okay. All right, I will entertain a motion then to pass.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Soraki and Commissioner Driscoll, please bring up the voting thing. And that is unanimous. Are we 13 today? Yeah.
We are.
Alrighty, committee updates. Track Committee, Mark O'Hara. Good to see you this morning.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Chair Gerard, Mr. Miller, esteemed board members. The track met virtually via Zoom on April 19th, 2022. TRAC was pleased to support PSTA's application for the RAISE grant by writing letters of support for the Clearwater Transit Center. TRAC's efforts garnished media coverage for the new transit center after last month's visit to the dilapidated Park Street terminal. Special thanks to former Chair Gloria Lepak Corrigan, whose letter was published in the Tampa Bay Times, letters to the other, and to our member Sebastian Zamardo for collecting signatures for the petition. We look forward to the favorable approval of the RAISE grant in a few months. We fully support PSTA's recommendation to bring the fare equity and transit accountability to our frequent low-income riders. TRAC heard about the continued implementation of the Flamingo fares, the improvements to the Transportation Disadvantaged, or TD program, and we support recommending an increase in the TD income threshold from 150% to 200% of Florida's poverty level, or FPL. This will need to go to the local coordinating board of Forward Pinellas. We were pleased to hear about the continued improvements in the Access Paratransit service by Bonnie Epstein. They are working quickly to reduce complaints, fine-tune the new software, and improve the on-time performance of participating contractors. She shared a new accountability report, which will be updated monthly as they complete the improvement milestones by the end of June 2022. The next TRAC meeting will be on Tuesday, May 17th at 4 p.m., and all are welcome to attend. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Questions? All right, thank you. All right, next up, Forward Pinellas, Commissioner Driscoll.
Thank you. The Forward Pinellas Board met on April 13th, 2022. Highlights from that meeting include the Complete Streets Grant Program. The board awarded the City of St. Pete Beach and Pinellas County with over $1 million for Complete Streets project. This includes projects at the City of St. Pete Beach for its Downtown Redevelopment District Complete Streets Network project, Pinellas County for the Whitney Road Complete Streets Planning Project, and Pinellas County for implementation of the 62nd Avenue North Complete Streets Construction Project. The Forward Pinellas Board also approved amendments to the 2020 to 2022 Unified Planning Work Program and also the Transportation Improvement Program. This is to deobligate some funding in the current fiscal year so that it is available to support planning activities that begin in July. The activities include development of the 2050 Long Range Transportation Plan, the procurement of additional trail counting equipment, and continued support of the crash data monitoring program. Also, regarding waterborne transportation, the board adopted amendments to the waterborne transportation section of the Advantage Pinellas 2045 Long Range Transportation Plan, including the incorporation of a system-wide waterborne vision and a county-wide waterborne transportation policy. This is critical for the long-range transportation plan as we move forward with waterborne services to ensure that the projects are prioritized and federal and eligible for funding on the state and federal levels. That concludes my report on Forward Pinellas Board. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Commissioner Flowers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We held the T-Barter meeting at the Tampa International Airport on the 22nd of April. So first, I want to say thank you to the Executive Director and staff there for a warm invitation to all of us. One of the things we discussed is signing the lease, so T-Barter will have its new space. We received a wonderful deal, even in this time, when it comes to paying rental fees and lease agreements. So we'll be moving into our new space shortly, and I'll provide that address for anyone who may want it. We talked about the interlocal agreement for financial contributions from the various counties and municipalities, and this was a very lengthy discussion. It came up under the Finance Committee, of which I chair, and we also discussed it at length during the full board meeting. What we discovered and decided to change was When you look at the amount that individuals were being asked to pay as their pro rata share from those municipalities based on population, the figures for Hillsborough County and Pinellas County also reflected what was being paid by Tampa for Hillsborough and what was being paid by St. Petersburg for Pinellas. So we backed those numbers out. For example, initially Pinellas was paying or asked to pay for its pro rata $163,048.19. St. Pete was being asked to pay $45,526.34, when actually that $45,000 should have been subtracted from the county's $163,000, because it was like they were paying twice. And so the changes made, and I know I brought these figures here before, that's why I'm reading them into the record now. So the changes made is that Pinellas County will pay $117,521.85, and St. Pete would remain at the $45,000 mark. For Hillsborough, it will be, instead of the $248,159.54, it will be $178,867.71, with Tampa being assessed $69,291.83. I will report, however, that Tampa has stated that they do not have the ability to pay the amount that was presented for their pro rata. We have asked that David Green go back and have additional conversations with the mayor of Tampa as well as with their board, because statutorily, all of the entities that are represented are a part of TBARTA by legislation. And so we really want buy-in from all persons who are a part or make up the components of TBARTA. So hopefully I'll be able to bring an update to you next month. Because there seem to be not confusion, but questions about what TBARTA is doing, where is TBARTA, et cetera, the board did ask for David Green and a staff member to contact the various municipalities and counties to get on their calendar to actually make a presentation about what's going on with TBARTA, where TBARTA is, the funding allocations, things that we're working on for the future as it relates to regionalization of transportation, and all of that, so that persons will actually know what's going on with TBARTA and where we are. Even though those of us that serve on TBARTA, we make presentations, I believe, and so did the person who requested, which was Commissioner Janet Long, the person who requested the presentations. It's just sometimes best for those organizations, because Forward Pinellas comes to the county and makes a presentation, and so many others, and they go to other places, so it's best that staff do that. So we're hopeful that that will then afford additional information to the city council members and the commissioners about what's going on with TBARTA more in depth, so that we can have full participation when it comes to payment for the pro rata share. And if there are any additional questions on that, I'm happy to answer those. We had an update for our 2022 Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan. That is something that is required by statute. I'm very pleased to report that we had just one incident that we needed to report, but that was basically a clean bill of health, and we approved the Transportation Safety Plan unanimously. The executive director gave his report. The gist of that is that, of course, we'll be moving into our new space, and that we will be conducting our second annual Green Your Commute Challenge from May 15th through the 21st. This is a way to help raise the profile of Commute Tampa Bay and promote transportation options and let people know that public transportation is for everybody. An individual winner will be selected at random, and they will receive a $100 grand prize. New staff report is now being provided to board members each month. So the unfunded regional transit needs list identifies all of the collective priorities within the member communities with TBARTA. We also had a presentation on the benefits of electric vehicles. Of course, we've continued to push that any vehicles that we purchase are electric. We also talked about the charging stations and the importance of having them centrally located and how long a vehicle could run on battery life before it would have to go back to its base camp to recharge. And what that would look like if we had those charging stations strategically placed so that we wouldn't have to purchase additional buses, because if a bus goes offline, something's got to go back in its place to be online. I did say that PSTA, of course, we're looking at that as well, and suggested that they communicate with Brad, maybe they already have, about partnering on some of those charging stations that will be located throughout the community, so that will help share on cost and utilization. Our next board meeting is May 20th, 2022 at 10 o'clock p.m., and we'll have that meeting here at PSTA. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great. Any questions? Thank you for a very thorough report. Okay, we have one action item this morning, TD Equity Fair Policy Recommendations. Our project planner, Nicole Dufka, will go over the recommended changes to the qualifications for our transportation disadvantaged bus passes. Nicole.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, board members. My name is Nicole Dufa, and I'm a project planner here. And today I'm excited to present to you the latest recommendations in our work toward fair equity. Oh, bring up my presentation. Perfect. All righty. The action item today is to approve a recommendation to the Ford Pinellas Local Coordinating Board to increase the eligibility of the PSTA's Transportation Disadvantage Program income threshold from 150% of the federal poverty level to 200% of the federal poverty level. The Planning Committee last week heard this item and along with Commissioner Shulman and the rest of the Planning Committee members unanimously approved this recommendation. You may remember that we came to you about this time last year with our recommendations for fair equity. We were studying national trends on improving equity in transit, and so specifically we wanted to identify how we could improve equity in our fare structure. We first recommended the implementation of daily and monthly fare capping through our Flamingo fares as a method toward improving fare equity, and that launched last year. Our second recommendation is well underway in the hands of our mobility team to improve access to our current existing low-income reduced fare program known as Transportation Disadvantage, which I'll call TD for short. Our final recommendation is to expand PSTA's income-based discount option to more individuals. And this is the recommendation I'm bringing to you today. PSTA's TD program is a discounted fare program for riders earning 150% of the federal poverty level or less. In 2022, 150% of federal poverty level amounts to $9.80 when working full-time. That's $9.80 an hour when working full-time. Those who qualify for this program only pay $11 a month for their bus pass versus the full fare of a monthly bus pass, which is $70. That means TD riders are saving $59 a month on their transportation costs. That's a huge deal when you're living on a tight budget of less than $10 an hour. TD riders are required annually to recertify their eligibility in this program. And so when we restarted fare collection last year in the summertime, after being free for over a year during the pandemic, we quickly recertified them as early as June 2021 so that they would only have to pay the $11 a month before when they started paying again and riding that summer. This income recertification would have started before Florida recently increased its minimum wage to $10 an hour. And so this means, based on the new 2022 federal poverty level guidelines, when current TD riders, so anyone enrolled in the program now, recertify this summer or later to remain in the program, assuming their wages have increased to $10 an hour, they will no longer qualify for the program, and they'll be no longer eligible for the $11 a month bus pass. So let's think about the impact of losing that benefit. Most people know that we shouldn't be spending more than 30% of our income on housing. After housing, the second most expensive expense in any household budget is transportation. And so when we think of affordable, according to the Center for Neighborhood Technology, affordable for both the housing and transportation costs should only be 45% of our income. In Pinellas County, the average household budget spends up to 57% of their income on housing and transportation combined. So that's over 10% more than what is considered affordable, what Pinellas County residents are paying for their housing and transportation costs. So that leaves less than half of their remaining income on basic needs, basic expenses like groceries, childcare, healthcare, technology, and the sort. And so when we think about a survival budget, according to the United Way, where you can just afford to pay for most of your basic needs like housing, transportation, groceries, and healthcare, requires earning over $13 an hour for a single-person household just to survive. By considering a move to 200% of the federal poverty level, for which for a single-person household is only $13 a month, or sorry, $13 an hour, we would be offering significant savings in the transportation portion of our riders' budgets, and allowing more money to be spent in other areas on other basic needs, which we know are getting more expensive. We all know that Tampa Bay is one of the hottest places to move to, and the rising cost of living is reflecting that. Housing prices and rental costs are all increasing this year. In 2021, there was a 24% increase in the cost to rent here in Tampa Bay. And so what do we think the increase in these expenses will do to the average household's budget, especially when it comes to their housing and transportation costs? Per the 2020 census, about 11% of Pinellas County lived below the poverty line. But when you look at increasing that to 200% of the federal poverty line, that's actually 30% of Pinellas County residents earning only $13 an hour. That's almost 300,000 people living on a survival budget here in Pinellas County who could benefit from reduced transportation costs. So we reached out to our riders about this topic as well. We administered an online survey in December of last year, asking riders a variety of questions about their ridership habits, flamingo fares, and their income. The survey respondents lean heavily towards lower incomes, with almost 60% earning about 150% of the federal poverty level or less. They are also more likely to be enrolled in social service programs like SNAP benefits, and they also believe that their income should qualify them for an income-based discount. These are the folks that we think that could become ineligible for TD when they recertify later this year. On the financial side of the argument, pre-pandemic, PSTA received over $3 million from the Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged for the TD program. This money was used to reimburse PSTA for the cost of the monthly bus passes sold. PSTA averaged about 5,600 bus passes sold per month in fiscal year 19, and the program was so popular that we exceeded the grant funding, and we were unable to bill for the reimbursement for all of the bus passes that we sold. However, in 2022, our grant formula allocation, while it remained the same, but our bus pass purchases have actually gone down since we came back from the pandemic. We're not meeting our reimbursement potential if we don't bring more people back into the program. And so because of the reduced number of bus passes sold, PSTA has not been able to draw down the full allocation from the CTD grant, and we're approximately 25% under budget now. And if that trend continues, our Chief Financial Officer, Debbie Leah, says that we could be approximately $900,000 below budget by the end of the year. And we have also confirmed funding for FY23 already, and the Commission for the Transportation Disadvantaged actually increased our share by over $500,000. And so if we implemented the increase to 200% of the federal poverty level, PSTA would likely be cost neutral using those extra funds available to us to be able to bring more people into the program. So we think that this is good for Pinellas County, this is good for its residents, and won't hurt PSTA. And that is why we are presenting this action item before you today. And we ask that you approve the recommendation to increase the TD eligibility income threshold from 150% to 200% of the federal poverty level, which will then go on to the Forward Pinellas Local Coordinating Board for approval from there. The Planning Committee, chaired by Commissioner Schulman, unanimously approved this action item. And so we think this is an important change that we can make when considering equity, the challenges our riders face when it comes to the rising cost of living here, and how we can make a positive impact. Thank you, and any questions?
No, great presentation.
Thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quick question, potentially. How did we get to selecting 200%?
That is a great question. So we did explore, I'll actually go back, if you don't mind. We did explore the feasibility of going up to 250%. So we knew we wanted to increase it from 150. We knew that 150 wasn't enough. When we looked at the hourly rate for the one-person household with, at 200% of federal poverty level at $13 an hour, and knowing the survival budget, we kind of saw some synergy there where we said, is this enough? And we also didn't want to take too big of a jump. We aren't sure how this current inflation in our economy will influence the federal poverty level thresholds in 2023. So they are updated every year. And so if they adjust to inflation, we're not sure how that works. And with also the potential to increase such the number of people that we could serve by increasing to 200% of federal poverty level, with that, opening up over 300,000 people in Pinellas County eligible for the program potentially. We wanted to see if we could bring more people in and sustain it at 200% of federal poverty level before we looked at increasing if the federal poverty level doesn't adjust for inflation. We'll be willing to evaluate a further increase if necessary, but we felt like 200% was a good point to evaluate if we're going to make enough of an impact by bringing more people in, while also considering the budget as well.
Okay, so the idea here is we didn't want to oversubscribe
Yes.
to the available funds that are there. Okay.
The short answer, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you all.
A lot of work on that. I will entertain a motion.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Flowers and Commissioner Driscoll. Please bring up the voting. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I have any questions from the public? Do we have anybody who would like to speak on this issue?
No public comments.
Okay, thanks. Okay, that is unanimous.
Great.
Okay. All right, information items. Brad, comparative pandemic ridership trends. And thank you, Commissioner Schulman, for asking for this.
Yes, I thought that this presentation by two of our current members of the Leadership PSA class of 2022 that I'll introduce what went so well at the Finance Committee that I brought them back to talk to all of you. Olivia Anderson and Reed Powers are two of our data gurus that work at PSTA. I want to join them in that characteristic myself, and so they're going to talk to you a little bit about the ridership trends during the pandemic, and then comparing it to other cities across the country or other transit systems using the data that we get by being a member of our benchmarking group, which is called the American Bus Benchmarking Group. Olivia.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Hello, board members. As Brad lovingly introduced, my name is Olivia Anderson, and I'm a data analyst at PSTA.
And I'm Reed Powers. I'm a project planner.
Let me go ahead and pull up our presentation. Again, as Brad introduced, we are here today to talk about the impacts of the pandemic on our ridership and then look at a comparison of our performance of our ridership to other agencies to see how that is overall doing. Before you, we have a graph of our ridership over the last 2.5 years. In that very first dip, March, April 2020, we all know of a thing that happened called COVID. With COVID, panic, PSTA responded with reducing our service to 82% of the levels that we were at before the pandemic. We put capacity restrictions in place. We suspended fares. We went rear door boarding. We wanted to make sure that both our riders and our operators are staying safe with the uncertainty that was happening. Over the course of the year, as the pandemic was progressing, we saw that ridership was actually increasing, coming back. And so with that, in October 2020, we increased our service to encompass more highest ridership routes to get more people on the bus. We still had fare suspended. We still had capacity restrictions in place, but ridership was increasing. In February 2021, we expanded service again. We went back to normal service, but we had an ending time of 10 p.m. At this point, we removed the restrictions, but we were still restrictions on capacity, but our fares were still suspended. As we can see, our ridership did start to take a little dip as we saw Delta coming into play and the launch of our cash fares in Flamingo Fares system. Flamingo Fares was still free for riders as long as they got the card, a promotional item, but we introduced our cash fares into play. September, we launched all fares fully, and we saw a dip in our ridership in comparison to what we were seeing when our fares were suspended. March 2022, we have seen a huge uptick in our ridership for a number of reasons, one of them being spring break, but as well as potentially other things that we will be looking into over the course of the next few months to see if anything is going to be long-lasting or spring break is just a little blip in ridership. Who knows where it's going to go from here?
Thank you, Olivia. So this graph is showing the same thing Olivia was just showing. This is ridership over the last 2.5 years or so, but this is showing a few of our more popular routes within our system, not just the system as a whole, like the last graph. And this is just showing that it's not just one popular route that is skewing the graph we were just looking at. All the routes in our system had a pretty similar pattern of the big decrease during COVID, pretty quick rise up in ridership as people got used to and started to live with COVID, and then that decline when we introduced fares once again, and then that high uptick we've seen in the last month or so from spring break and several other factors. So this graph is also showing over the course of the pandemic. This is the Pinellas County workplace travel trends. This data comes from Google Community Mobility Reports. They're pulling data from your Android phone to see where people are traveling throughout just Pinellas County. And you can see the big dip that happens right when COVID hits. There's about a 50% reduction in workplace travel. So this is showing that it's not only our riders who are traveling less due to the pandemic, but everyone within Pinellas County is traveling less for work due to the pandemic. It's people driving cars, people taking public transit. Everyone was moving less. So it wasn't just us who were feeling the effects. It was the entire county, the entire transportation community within Pinellas County. And you can see this is following the same trend down and then a slow upward trend throughout the pandemic. As Brad mentioned earlier, we are also comparing ourselves to several of the ABBG other agencies within ABBG that we are a part of. So this graph is showing all the agencies within that organization. We are the green graph. Yeah, we're labeled there. We are the green line within this graph, and the average for all agencies within ABBG is that black line you see there. You can see they all follow a general trend. When COVID hits, they all decrease, and then there's a rise up, kind of back to normal as we learn to live with COVID. But the important thing in this graph is that we had a shallower dip than a lot of the other agencies, than the average, and we had a quicker increase in ridership once people started to get used to COVID. And we kept that increased ridership higher than the average throughout almost all of the pandemic. You can only see that we have that decrease in August, or in July and September when we reintroduced fares. And a big reason for this large, a big reason for our outperformance of the average throughout much of the pandemic is that we remained fare-free for much longer than I think any other agency in the country, at least within ABBG. We are not charging people, they are riding more, and then when we introduce fares, you see we go back down to the average. This graph only goes to December 21, that's the latest data we had available from ABBG, but even only going to December 21, you see we're starting to be a little above the average even then. So performing well throughout most of the pandemic, and we're continuing to perform very well. So some key takeaways. PSTA recovered from initial COVID very well. And we made numerous scheduling and policy changes that Olivia mentioned to ensure that ridership matched demand. It wasn't just PSTA that was affected. All modes of transportation within Pinellas County were affected that the Google graph showed us. Fares have decreased ridership in recent months. And spring break, the recent increase in gas prices and the return to full service, which happened February 27th, are all likely causes for the increased ridership that we have seen in the last month or so. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
It's very interesting, actually, especially the one about all the travel going down. I mean, I think we noticed that for a while, but it doesn't seem like it's down now.
There's more traffic than ever.
Commissioner Schulman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I concur. It does not seem like that now. For me, I think one of the biggest takeaways from this is that ridership was increased when fares were taken away or reduced. And so the next question, it's nice to know how it worked for future decision-making process, but the next question for me is doing a closer study on price sensitivity and ridership, right? So we have our fare box, our fares are the highest or among the highest
In Florida.
In Florida. And so is there a point where we can still have some fare box recovery, but dramatically increase ridership, which then helps the community, gets more cars off the road, reduces emissions, right? So, this tells me that consumers are willing to make a change to their habits based on the cost of the fare. And so the next question would be, can we and I think we should move forward with a better study on what the sensitivity is for that. Otherwise, I think the presentation is great. I know there's a lot more that we can delve into, but this is a great first step, and I think it also helps give us some context as how other agencies are doing and did through the pandemic, as well as what might be the new trend in transportation and how that's moving forward. So, thank you, and hopefully we can move forward with a fair study.
And it'll be interesting to see how the TD fares being available to more people have an impact.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a pretty big savings. Any other questions? And I would go along with that we need to study the nexus. And yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Reed.
Awesome.
Sylvia.
Thank you.
Great. Great.
Let's see, reports and correspondence. Brad, we have several things on here.
We do.
Go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. So, in your packet under reports are a number of key items. The performance reports, which Reed and Olivia kind of just outlined in the month of March, was very successful. The ridership went up dramatically, especially on, if you saw on his graph of the different routes, the tourist-oriented routes, the trolley that goes up and down Gulf Boulevard, the Central Avenue trolley saw their record ridership ever, even pre-pandemic, broke records. It's been a very big spring break time. Spring break is always the highest ridership time of the year. And then, as Reed pointed out, probably we return to full service, gas prices, no doubt. We have a half-fare promotion on Flamingo going on right now. I think that makes it easier for tourists to ride. They can just download the app and ride, and they are riding in a big, big way. So that's in your packet. The other item related to performance metrics that we presented to the Finance Committee is a new report called PSTA Access Accountability Metrics. And you might recall, Commissioner Cox suggested, and we had a good session at a planning committee last month, looking at our PSTA Access service, that service for people with disabilities, and how the new contractors that we have in place, the new software that we're rolling out is going. And so in your packet is a sort of comprehensive one-page report of a whole bunch of statistics that we're tracking now. And the planning committee members, I thank them, they came up with several of these themselves. But it ranges from the very top, which is just ridership on our different programs, complaints, on-time performance, and then you can see the milestones that the software is going through now to make improvements. I'm very excited because we have the CEO of Spare Labs with us. Christopher Hansen is here. Christopher, hey. He's come from Vancouver, British Columbia to go over to our dispatch operations, see how they're using the software, and how other improvements can be made, just to try to hone it even better. So we're going to keep tracking these access improvements as the software gets rolled out, as different phases of the program gets rolled out, and make sure we stay on the right track. And then finally in your packet is the presentation we presented to the Planning Committee on the budget assumptions, as we are just starting the process, like all of your member governments are starting to put together their FY23 budget. This month we have the assumptions that are listed in there. The next month the Planning Committee will hear the capital improvement program, the capital budget, and then the full board will receive its first presentation on the full PSTA budget for 2023 in June. So that concludes those reports. That kind of describes what's on the future meeting subjects. We're getting into the budget season, of course. I did want to point out a couple of things that are at your places. I think you all have hopefully a Dunedin block party up in Commissioner Gow's hometown, May 6th. Come up there to ride Ava. Ava had a very successful run on Clearwater Beach. My staff tells me this is a little bit unconfirmed, but since I've told it many times already, I was told that we had the highest ridership on a autonomous vehicle ever on St. Patrick's Day on Clearwater Beach. We're trying to validate if that's completely true, but it's pretty awesome. Yeah, that's right. Well,
Until somebody.
yeah, the tourists along Clearwater Beach really enjoyed coming out and checking out an autonomous driverless vehicle, and it was very successful. And now it's going back to Dunedin for at least 6 weeks. We're still kind of analyzing it. I did get an opportunity to meet the newly elected mayor of Tarpon Springs, and of course he's very excited. He wants Ava to come off to Tarpon Springs. So maybe that might be its next stop. Also at your places is a flyer, because before we meet again, the construction contractor will be starting to pour the red asphalt along First Avenue North and South in St. Petersburg as part of the Sunrunner construction project. And so once that gets poured and then it has to go through a period of drying or whatever, then the lanes will be open. The contractor's going to put variable message signs out, but essentially the rules of how those lanes go into place start then. Will start next month. That is a turn lane only. It's getting that way with the lines painted and everything. At least my observation is the cars are sort of staying out of that lane for through travel already, and they're just using it for turns. But that will be the requirement, especially once the lanes are poured. And then there's a summary card that we put together also. I want to thank Commissioner Flowers and Commissioner Alberton, who's not here today, for coming with me to Washington, D.C. in May to advocate for the Clearwater Transit Center, to get construction dollars, to get that project finally going after over a decade of need for a new transit center in downtown Clearwater. So thank you guys for coming with me to that, and hopefully we'll, like we did in Tallahassee, we'll be successful in D.C. And finally, thank you, Commissioner Schulman, for coming to our Earth Day party, our event that we had down in St. Petersburg that capped off a lot of Earth Day activities going on. And I want to thank the PSTA board for doing your part to save the Earth. Debbie Leas told me that she asked all of you if you would like a paper copy of our award-winning budget document in paper, and none of you requested.
Right.
So I know you were doing your part to save the Earth,
It's all about
save paper.
conservation. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Commissioner Schulman.
Just a quick question on the turn lanes. Do we know what the distance, if someone's going to be using the turn lanes for turning, how far before the turn they're allowed to be in that lane?
Well, I don't know if
Somebody
Abhishek is
knows
still on
back
there.
there?
One block.
Okay, so my recommendation would be in this materials that we're putting out, is that we highlight the fact that it's one block, just so it takes out the ambiguity. If I was turning half a mile down the road, sort of comment.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other business we need to take care of? Any comments from the board? Yes, Commissioner Schulman.
I don't know why it's my day. So I just wanted to point out, yesterday there was a story about school start times being adjusted due to bus driver shortages. And the Pinellas County School Board is going to take that up. But every time that happens, that's an opportunity for us to talk about future partnership and how we can help engage the community in transporting children at various ages. I realize these were all elementary schools that were changing, but it's just another opportunity to keep reinforcing that message back out. So I just want to make sure we're not missing those chances when they come up.
Okay. Okay. And I just wanted to congratulate our marketing director, Whitney Fox, on her brand-new 100-day dream home. For those of you who have missed it, who haven't seen it on HGTV, I understand she's having an open house for all of us this weekend?
Oh, she is? Okay, great.
No, not really. Good. Yeah. But it's very cool. I think it's still playing, so check it out.
Yeah.
Anything else for the good of the order? If not, we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Might have been a record. Some meetings are very long and some are not. Is Heather here?
Bye. See you next time.